Also for this afternoon, again for anyone who's considering sneaking out, we've got a great lunch, of course, another networking opportunity. After that is the round tables. It's something I really need to work on how to describe these round tables. I never do a very good job at it, but at the end of the conference, many people tell us that that's the highlight of the whole conference. Big initiatives have been started off. Recently, you might have seen in the news about the increasing use of rail for finished vehicle logistics in India. What really got that going was a round table at our India conference, our first India conference in Delhi. We had a round table on finished vehicle logistics. The main subject was rail, and it was from there that they really got together and formed a group to get that into place. And now we're seeing the first of the rakes coming through for India from Maruti Suzuki and APL Vasco. There's other big initiatives in packaging and others that started off at our conferences around the world. We haven't really run the round tables in Europe properly before, but this time we've decided to go for it. So just come in, find the round table that suits you. You'll find smaller groups, a good chance for extra networking, but also to have honest discussions. You know, we kill ourselves to put the program together, but we're also aware that people have got their own restrictions on what they can say on stage. So you'll often get a little bit more detail, perhaps, you know, it's rude to say in front of the panel, but a little bit more honesty sometimes in small round tables than you'll get in big open rooms. And as we go to the finished vehicle logistics, the future, I'm just trying to make sure we've got this the right way around. This is the panel and this is the audience. I'm not quite sure with the numbers which one's which. But. So, finished vehicle logistics, the future. For all our sessions, really, finished vehicle logistics this year, we've kept them quite broad to enable discussion on how the industry should develop. A little bit on where we are today. Yesterday we talked at some of the other options, whether it's new trailers, new areas of that we can look into, whether it was regional, whether it was used cars or car rental and so on. And this session is really is about the future, what we can do, what the industry will look like in the future, what will influence finished vehicle logistics, what can we do about it. So we're looking forward, looking ahead at what we can do to make sure that we're part of that future, to direct the future, to influence the future. So that's the purpose of this session. And again, once again, it is an interactive session. One of the reasons we got this great panel and different, kind of companies on the panel is to encourage the discussion. So, and the panel, I'll go through them very quickly. Initially is Ben Waller from ICDP, Matthias Berlit from Inform, Bill Kerrigan from KGI Consulting, but also representing AIAG, Paul Sykes from Hertz, Carlos Lahoz from Kia, and Bosch Virdi from the GmbH group. But we'll start off with just a couple of presentations to give us something to hang our discussions on, and then we'll go afterwards to the Q&A and the panel discussion. So the first speaker telling us where next for finished vehicle logistics, I'd like to invite to the podium Ben Waller, Senior Researcher for ICDP.
Okay, so I'm just going to run through a few different areas and issues. I won't have time to go into huge detail, but obviously pester me later if there's something that catches your attention in particular. First thing to say is that I was very interested in the discussion yesterday. We talked about the total end-to-end value chain, and once again, which happens almost every year, the dealers, the role often gets overlooked. And so people are talking about inventory optimization, and the last 2 years we've seen unprecedented levels of stuffing the dealers full of stock in some markets, leading to bankruptcies and pressures on dealers in how they get their stock financed when they go and see their bank managers. I mean, in some markets, dealers have to go to banks rather than manufacturers for their inventory financing. So the first thing to say is that overstocking appears affordable at the moment with low base rates. But the costs of stocking and poor management and oversupply undermine the dealer position and ultimately long-term have quite some damaging effects on the brand position, residual values, customer perception, and so on. Let's just briefly on the left take an example of a volume manufacturer in Europe. 1 day's worth of sales, an additional day's worth of sales of inventory out in the dealer networks or at distribution centres arounds to a working capital of around 21 million euros. And so this stock over the stock objective is a huge cost to dealers and to manufacturers through the national sales companies. So 18 days over the stock objective, that's over their target of stock in the marketplace, 378 million, which equates to about 120,000 euros per main dealer. And the dealers are bearing the most of this cost at present in most of the markets in Europe. On top of that, we've seen huge pressures from manufacturers for what people are now calling zero stock objectives, to try and squeeze the inventory out of the manufacturing system as early as possible, changing the invoice point maybe to factory release or arrival in the marketplace, and therefore improve the working capital position of the manufacturer. If you look at the books of some manufacturers, it's quite clear that that's been quite a priority for some time, and understandably. But this creates extra pressures and may undermine some of the customer satisfaction issues and priorities for dealers and for NSCs when thinking about availability of products to customers. So additional costs, the one we've just talked about, our surveys show that about 3.2% of overall turnover is lost through discounting and lost sales due to non-availability, the right specification not being available, an acceptable lead time to customers. Another 1.8% incurred cost for physical dealer-to-dealer transfers, swaps of vehicles, again to satisfy particular specification requirements. Another 2.2% of discounting on overage stocks, so vehicles over 180 days at the dealership or at a national distribution centre. And those all are directly attributable to availability and customer service failures created by poor management of inventory in the system. On top of that is the perennial issue of oversupply, which is obviously a key issue for some of the volume manufacturers, and many markets are reporting overall discount rates to the retail side of 18%, certainly France, Germany and the UK last year. So huge amounts of discounting going on. So when we talk about the total value chain, there's a lot being lost through both overstocking and the problems arising from oversupply. And given that many manufacturers are looking for cash at the moment, still, even though things are looking a bit brighter, this is could be a main area for targeting a reduction of that gap, rather than just pushing the problem out of sight to dealers. Now, I won't go into any detail, but despite this conflict between the accountants and the cost controllers and logisticians, many of which understand the benefits of centralized stocking, even when the stock is consigned to dealers and paid for by dealers. And many manufacturers, particularly in the UK and several Asian brands across Europe, still stick to this as a key part of their strategy. But where it's been in place for a long time, dealers understand it. It works when it's aligned with margin and bonus schemes, good analysis and data and control by the national sales companies, and finance and trading rules to allow good swaps of stock between dealers. Now, stepping back a bit, we are involved in lots of different areas in distribution, and one of the main areas we look at is sales networks. And we think that we're reaching a point where we're going to see quite a lot of changes happen to dealer networks across Europe. Partly because customer behaviour is changing. They arrive at the dealership knowing more about the product than the dealer, or in many cases. And despite good online interaction with the manufacturer, there's very poor interaction with the dealer before the customer arrives. And so a lot of this behaviour is now moving online, and the industry has got to find a way to resolve this. So customers are expecting to interact online, everywhere, at any point, on tablets, smartphones, potentially in their car with telematics as well. And this will lead to a situation where manufacturers are thinking about now building a cross-channel or omni-channel, to use the buzzword approach, where the customer can have a seamless interaction with dealer, with manufacturer, through the website, through their smartphone, and that customer identity is understood, their records understood, and it's more like account management than some kind of nebulous flow of interactions. And this will have quite a significant impact on ongoing dialogue with customers rather than very infrequent interactions, better network use of data, and that will require huge changes in the way manufacturers and dealers think about data management. And physical networks, as a result, may start to look quite different. Perhaps fewer dealers overall across Europe. We've seen a trend long-term of reduction in dealer outlets, but perhaps a change to more hub and spoke outlets with different roles and different functions. On top of this, the customer experience requirements may be changing as well. More customers appear to be looking for more flexible service offerings, a bit more like the fleet side, but in the retail business, rather than just simple ownership or rental of cars. If you think about the mobile phone industry, customers can have very flexible monthly contracts with different elements they can bolt on, add, such as travel, bolt-ons when they travel and so on, which can be switched on and off relatively easily. And the growth of personal leasing and telematics and increased interactivity with customers is making some car makers think a bit more about how they can bundle packages and sell them to customers. In the UK, you have Renault 4 Plus, Peugeot Just Add Fuel, Toyota in France have been doing bundle offers for some time, and Mercedes in Italy as well. But some of the elements of that are quite novel. Car sharing, for example, is now entering the mainstream in quite a significant way, and manufacturers are entering it with certainly some trepidation, but in a mind of integrating it with their mainstream offers. So Drive Now, the joint venture between Sixt and BMW, for example, slightly aside to BMW's strategy, but a key part of how they see customer behavior changing. If you look at Daimler with Car2Go, if you're a smart owner, you can have discounted access to the Car2Go car sharing scheme. And Daimler also has interests in carpooling.com and carpooling.com and Car2Share, peer-to-peer sharing of vehicles. So with Daimler Mobility Services bringing these different parts of their offer together, certainly some of the premium car makers are looking at how to bundle things in a way that makes the customer experience more than just about buying a car or leasing a car. So many of these changes we see to buyer behavior and the industry response raises lots of opportunities for logistics service providers. Firstly, more bundled services attached to things like personal leasing, such as Renault 4 Plus here, which is after sales, finance and everything bundled in, opens the door to more vehicle collection and running defleet, reconditioning and remarketing centres, more like the fleet business. Secondly, the growth of car sharing, such as Drive Now, particularly in urban areas, and as an add-on service, as I've said, for car buyers and fleets, opens the door to more fleet management services, perhaps service and repair centres dedicated to car sharing offers, including smart repair, as per perhaps the daily rental sector. Although we're talking about finished vehicles here, I also wanted to open up some of the parts opportunities as well. Further structural declines in service and repair volumes is forcing everyone, including manufacturers, to think again about optimization of last mile logistics, more collaborative approaches such as TPS in the UK. Telematics and always-on communication will help improve demand forecasting and ordering for parts services, particularly when failures of items can be communicated through to the dealer and to parts logistics distribution centres. And finally, online markets are emerging, which are starting to break traditional behaviours in parts sales channels and distribution. OZ2R.com, for example, O7ZR, I always get that wrong, basically has emerged the last 18 months as a new online portal doing a huge amount of trading between business-to-business partners just focused on the tyre market. And what they're doing is breaking the economies of scale, delivering small batch, high flows of volume, many-to-many transactions and deliveries. So a lot of these changes will mean that some of the logistics providers, both on the new side and the aftermarket side, if they go in early, we'll be able to take opportunities of new business models which manufacturers and others are experimenting with. So I hope that wasn't too much of a dash through some of the issues, but I hope that was a good insight into where we see some of the things going over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben, and particularly giving us an oversight on the retail side, which is where our business serves, or is supposed to serve. Next up, giving us his thoughts on what might influence finished vehicle logistics in the future, I'd like to welcome Matthias Berlit from Inform. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Well, the topic here is future of automotive, and I'm speaking about automotive and not automotive logistics, and its effect on finished vehicle logistics. So we are going to take a look at maybe more how our world in finished vehicle logistics will look like in 10 years of time, or maybe 15 years of time. You know? First of all, let me introduce, just with maybe 3 slides, our company, where I'm coming from. I'm coming more from the technology side. We are based in Aachen, quite close here at the border to Belgium and Netherlands, having there our headquarter. And the company was founded in 1969 with the goal, with the objective to apply mathematical optimization technology to real-world application or operations. And today we have around 500 people now, and are applying our systems to large airports, container terminals, and of course also to, well, finished vehicle yards and central tracking systems and so on. So everywhere, in every business where there is a potential for an optimization because of the sheer complexity and size of the operation, it's an interesting market. Today I would like to focus on these automotive megatrends, and to come up with this presentation, I've did various studies in the internet taking a look at the megatrends for our cars in the future. One trend, of course, which is known for quite some time now is sustainability, or having greener cars. And well, the solutions to that seem to be electric vehicles, which have an effect, of course, on finished vehicle logistics. Most of you have up till now dealt with this. You need not power stations, but charging devices in your yards, for example. So this is increasing the complexity. Then hydrogen. A couple of OEMs are focusing on hydrogen instead of electric vehicles. So this topic is not gone yet. There are also plans to come up with this. And again, for finished vehicle logistics, this will have an impact with, again, another system to fuel up these cars. I think it's a chance for larger compounds and terminals, and of course, you need to work very professionally. Another megatrend we'll see in cars is the factor of computerization. So taking the car into the internet, for example, in order to be able to do your networking in your car, so having your common ways of messaging, social networks, etc., in your car. Secondly, having smartphone apps in order to control your car. I read from Ford in the US, for example, that they have a smartphone app now for, I think, one model right now. And actually, you can program how fast your son could drive with the car. Yeah? So it's locked in with the keys you give to your son. Quite nice. I mean, just imagine he's on the highway somewhere, and then suddenly you put it down to 30 miles. So, okay, I don't know. But of course, why is this not happening today? Yeah? That you have like maintenance intervals and stuff like that. In your home devices, you have it plenty of times. So this will come, definitely. And also then, if the car is in the internet, we can also speak from car to car. So have this car-to-car communication in order to exchange maybe weather conditions, street conditions ahead, just like here, that there maybe is a construction site somewhere, etc. Impacts from this to finished vehicle logistics, I think maybe the use of allocation devices, RFID and so on, maybe this can be an alternative to that. So just imagine that all your cars in a yard, you can communicate with them directly from your compound management system. And then you can get the GPS information from that car. So why use specific devices for that? The accuracy could be great if the cars on the yard are then talking to each other. And each car is not giving his own position, but also, well, on the right side of me, there's this car. On the left side, this car. So with this, you could get a perfect yard layout. So I think this can have a large impact on stuff like RFID, which is more and more coming right now. Well, safety and assistance. It started maybe something like 30 years ago with ABS and EPS then, and with other assistant or security safety systems. Then maybe 15 years ago, navigation systems came into the car, helped us a lot. I think it's fantastic. You just sit in the car and let the car show you where to go. And today, more and more cars are equipped with even more sophisticated assistance systems. These are actually, well, could be screenshots from my car. On the left side, you can program the car with this adaptive cruise control, how in what distance the car shall travel after the man in front of you. And on the right side, it's showing if you are going out of the lane. So in the end, the car is already pushing the brakes, pushing the gas in order to keep the distance, and it's showing me where I am on the highway. So I think it's quite, and we read a lot about this in the news, it will come to the factor that we have automated driving, autonomous driving cars. And then we have completely new interiors in our cars. Yeah, my way to work each morning is 80 kilometers, so I'm in the car for 45, 60 minutes. And if I could sit in the car and just put down, get down the table, put my laptop out, I'm connected to the internet, so I can have video conferences with people somewhere in Asia. Just perfect, great. I could use that time so much better than focusing on the street. Or looking at that, just relaxing a little bit in the car. Yeah? No. These are concept studies by Rinspeed I found on the internet, courtesy to them. I'm using them here. And just imagine you have a meeting in the next morning somewhere, and you don't want to stay in a hotel that night, but you simply sit in your car, you get your curtains closed, and sleep until the next morning. We need to find a shower then in the morning, but yeah. Of course, taking a look at this situation here, this is the real world, and cars need to have all kinds of sensors to identify all kinds of objects. And it's really a tough question. Just imagine there's a pedestrian standing on at the side, and he's nodding to you, you can go. Yeah. Is the computer able to recognize this? And how he will, or will he just simply stop because he is standing there, yeah, at this zebra stripes? So I think it's more likely that these autonomous driving cars are being implemented in closed areas where no pedestrians and other rather unpredictable objects are in place. And this could bring a cool effect to our finished vehicle compounds. Just imagine we are speaking with all these thousands of cars in the compound, and we can tell them where to drive next. Yeah, so a vessel is coming with hundreds or maybe thousands of cars, and the computer system is then telling them when to get out, where to park, and it's like an orchestration of the whole yard operation. And this can be much more continuously improved than today when you are working with drivers and so on. Of course, then you need intelligent systems who are able to to decide about the next best parking spot, about the best assignment, which car shall go when and where. Well, and last but not least, car sharing. We heard just from Ben that there are some effects on finished vehicle logistics and additional services which can be applied. I think car sharing is even more sexy when I think of combining car sharing, automated driving, and computerization with each other. Just think about having your app for your car sharing organization, and then you order, because you want to go to the supermarket, you say, okay, a couple of bags, I want to pay only or minimum a smart, for example. That's enough. It's only 2 kilometers. Well, and the smart is driving into your doorway just autonomously and in maybe a reasonable time, so maybe in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes. And maybe in the evening, I have a date with a fantastic woman and I want to impress her. So then I'm ordering maybe a Porsche, yeah, to go out on that date. It's only a dream from a married man, but yeah, this would be fantastic. You could show off, yeah, that you have, let's say, or you can use the car you really need for each event. And it's driving in just like a taxi. You have to wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes because they are standing and driving around, autonomously driving anyhow. It's just much more convenient. And I think then maybe there's really car share only in the future then. And this will have an effect on the whole industry then, because maybe we are not selling so many cars anymore, which wouldn't be good maybe for all of us, but let's see. Okay, these are our thoughts on where next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthias, for sharing us some visions of what the future may look like. But it also highlighted some of the good and the bad things that we can look forward to. An app controlling my son's speed sounds really good. But when I'm in my car away from home, do I really want my wife controlling what I'm even doing in the car? And I'm even concerned that if she could control it too much, I'll somehow end up driving over a bridge or something like that. So. And actually, I've just remembered that we're on the Automotive Live thing, so in case my wife's watching, when you said about the dream of being in a car with a Porsche with a beautiful woman, of course that would be my wife. Okay. So now we'll go on to the panel. I'll just ask them to make a few comments before we open it up to the questions. It's kind of going in order of the panel. It's very strange that we're talking about the future of the automotive industry. And then we get someone as old as Bill on the panel. But
Model T.
So Uncle Bill Kerrigan from representing AIAG. Anything that you want to add or bring, particularly, I guess from an American, a US perspective, what they're doing, what you're doing, what LSPs are doing, looking in the future of finished vehicle logistics?
Thanks, Louis. I just wanted to mention that, I've always thought that here in Europe, you make a very efficient use of the modes of transportation that are available to you, especially when I talk about short sea. That's something that's become more of a opportunity, let's say, with the increased production in Mexico. And I think we're going to have to reach out to some of our colleagues over here in the future to figure out how to set up a better network than we have right now. We obviously have to travel greater distances. We have to use a variety of rail and truck systems. But we need to learn how to use our waterways better, and that's something I hope we can learn from our European friends here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next, Paul Sykes from Hertz. Unless you are one of the Hertz family and we didn't realize it, I don't know. You know, what do you see going forward for Hertz? You know, we've talked about, you know, car sharing and things like that. How do you see your sector and maybe your company developing in that way?
For us, we need to have an agile approach to continue to meet our customer demands. We need to continue to be in a position to lead the rental market, but also to respond to the market as it changes. So for me, I need to think about what do I need to do as a customer of LSPs that right now have a very strong OEM focus. Mm-hmm. I need to communicate to them my business needs, where I see logistics as a key enabler of my overall performance. So how I plug logistics into my yielding, my car positioning decisions, how I can be more flexible, and how I can respond quickly to the market. And that includes everything from, you know, a very interesting technology, self-driving cars, telemetry in vehicles. We're already beginning to bring those sort of concepts to the market, but what we're trying to do is join them all together and understand what that means. And logistics is a key component of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And to Carlos from Kia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This morning, Carlos. I think you've even been working on a project yourself, looking at the future of automotive and automotive logistics.
Yes, thank you, Louis. Well, first of all, good morning all, and I would like to thank Louis again for inviting me. This is the second conference that I attend. And what I was telling Louis several times, I'm probably one of the executives with less knowledge in supply chain, which makes me question what is the industry going and how we're doing things. From my background, I've done a lot of different things, and I look at things in a kind of different way. If I see how the industry have evolved the last 10 years, so the crisis has hit the industry pretty hard. So we had probably a capacity of transportation around between 16 to 18 million of cars, and now we are selling around 13 million of cars. That is a huge adjustment that the manufacturers and also logistics providers needed to be done. So it has been in the industry a lot of merge, acquisitions, bankruptcies. Now the situation and the main problem we have now is the sustainability of the industry. So how are we going to ensure that the logistics is going to start earning money again? From a manufacturer point of view, we are pretty selfish in that way. So when we negotiate hard. We try to get the best prices. We get with our providers, and we try always to compare versus competition, and competition is really hard in the industry. So I think the industry in the next year should change dramatically. We manufacturers, OEMs, I think we need to involve ourselves more in making the industry sustainable. So we need to ensure that logistics providers, they need to start making money again. They need to start increasing their profitability. From Kia perspective, one of our most interest, it is to get partners that ensure that our growth, we're growing of the last years more than 50%, and we're going to continue this growth from a situation where the market it is not growing at this moment of time. So our main concern is to get providers that are giving us the right service at the right prices. So if you tell me, so the answer to increase profitability in the industry is that we raise prices, I say no. I mean, we don't want to pay more from what we are paying. I mean, we are selfish and our cost needs to go down again. But we are living in an industry that we do not have a collaborative environment. If you look from a consultative perspective of the whole industry, we are pretty inefficient in the way we're doing and we are managing the logistics from OEMs and suppliers. For example, the capacity of having empty mileage, how to reduce, how to fully utilize the capacity from all the providers. If we were, in a map, starting to cross all the routes and say, okay, factories in south of Europe versus factories in Central Europe, so we're going to combine and say that the flows of production will go from South Europe to Central Europe and then return, full loaded from Central Europe to South Europe. So we will maximize the full capacity. And exactly the same problem that the airlines they have, that it is the full utilization of the seats on a plane. You need to get the trucks fully loaded at any time, because if not, it is a loss of efficiency. And I think manufacturers, we are not involved on that. We negotiate in a way that it is not, as I said before, in a collaborative environment. We are having different negotiation periods. So when I negotiate a 3-year contract with a supplier, and then the supplier tells me, if I would know that that's the route you would like, I would negotiate. I was closing a deal last year with Seat, Renault, Opel, and I could have utilized and give you better price because I could have changed my routes, changing from one place to the other. So I would change the loads from Seat coming from Martorell to Central Europe, and then gets the loads from Kia to South Europe at the same time fully utilizing. But just the timings is the wrong ones. We are, every manufacturer, playing with 2 years, 3 years, 4 years contracts, not looking at each other. And one of the main reasons is because we are competitors. We don't like to sit together to try to see what is the best way to arrange a best, let's say, profitable way for the providers. But we're doing it with the parts providers. I mean, we get our engineers and we put them in the factories from our parts providers in order to improve their capacity and improve their efficiency, in order to have a better parts availability and a lower cost. So basically, from the OEM perspective, I think where next in the future, we should try to support better the logistics industry. We should collaborate more to try to improve the sustainability of your business. That's all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carlos. And to Bosch Virdi, Commercial Director from GmbH Group. Any comments?
From my perspective as a supplier, excuse my voice, it's very important that what Carl is saying, I totally agree with that. We need to get to a position where suppliers are becoming more and more profitable in order to invest for the future. In reality, what Carlos is saying about the short-term contracts and overlapping contracts with other manufacturers, that's quite critical, but the peaks and troughs actually destroy anything that you're trying to build. The marketplace actually does not lend itself to creating flows which are sustainable flows. They're sustainable during a period when there's a consistent marketplace, but during the peak periods, it becomes every man for themselves. So I think under those conditions, it's quite difficult to get to a position where every empty space is utilized. And I wholeheartedly agree that yes, costs can't go up, but in some capacity, we need to get to a position where we are more efficient, both environmentally and cost-wise as well.
Okay, thank you. A wide variety of views there on how finished vehicle logistics should improve in the future. I'm just going to throw a statistic out there. I'm not even sure I'm going to ask the question, but just from Bill Pollock's presentation yesterday, $50 billion a year is wasted on empty miles. It's just incredible. I think every company here will say that they've been fighting over pennies and euros and a few dollars. And $50 billion a year is wasted on empty miles because we're competitors, because we don't want our trucks on other people's trucks, because we don't want to share any information. We don't want to help the other company. The fact that, it seems sometimes that there's 50% gain share, 50% for one and 50% of the other. But I don't care about gaining my 50%. I just don't want the other guy to gain 50%. $50 billion a year wasted on empty miles. But on that positive thought, I'd like to throw it out to the floor if there's any questions or comments from anyone out there to agreeing, disagreeing, preferably disagreeing. It's much more fun. Thank you.
Yeah, still morning. Good morning. Björn Svenningsson from UCC. I think we're actually underestimating what we are doing. There is a lot more collaboration than what people are saying in this room, actually. Yes, we're fighting for the business, but once we have concluded a different agreement with the OEMs, then I see that there's a lot of sharing of space between the different carriers. So I think we are underestimating this a little bit. And then also I think that the view that has been presented about the empty mileage is quite simple, actually. I think it's a little bit more complex than what has been presented. And I think there are players in this room that have been in the trucking business for many years, and to receive this message yesterday, I think it's a very simple view on the business. There are lots of professionals in this room that are looking at this and fighting every day to cut out waste and reduce the empty mileage. So I think, again, just wanted to conclude and say that do not underestimate what's being done already.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Nazlı Bedir from Tofaş, Turkey. My question will be to all speakers. How do you think that 3D printing concept will be affecting automotive sector and our logistics processes?
Okay, I'll dare to go first on that. I think it's quite hard to imagine any immediate impact on finished vehicles as such, I would suggest. Who knows where it will end up with some of the plastic components in cars. It may result in a different way of thinking about last-minute configuration to line-side sequencing, for example, in manufacturing. However, I think there's a lot of opportunities out in the market as well to think about operations outside factories. Some brands already looking at mid-life refurbishment of vehicles. So, for example, Volkswagen's approved used car program in the UK, on the website you can look at changing the bumper on the car, the used 3-year-old car, from a plain one to one with parking sensors, for example. So with more of that kind of customization in life, potentially down the road 3D printers could allow that to be produced locally rather than sourced from a distance, potentially, with some kind of non-technical parts, maybe simple color-coded items, potentially. More widely, people have talked a long time about more late configuration out of the factory, but the issue's always been cost. And at the moment, 3D printing has got to a stage where you can do lots of different things quite locally, but cost is still a barrier compared to mass production. And I think unless somebody does something radical to break those differences in the economy of scale, I don't see an immediate impact on car distribution. But who knows, for certain customized items on color-coded plastic parts on cars, bumpers, interiors, potentially, maybe a dealer could have a 3D printer in their workshop, who knows?
Yeah, and on that point about accessorization, is that something that's that should be increasing, that is another opportunity for the finished vehicle logistics industry? Maybe I'm currently working on our next 3 or 4 conferences, one of them on finished vehicle logistics in North America. And one of the ideas that one of the car makers has come up with is the increasing accessorization at the port. Perhaps, I don't know if Bosch from GmbH has got any comments on that. Is it something that you're doing? Is it something that you see for the future?
Can I just first of all talk about 3D printing?
Yeah.
I'm involved in a project with Nottingham University where they're seriously looking at cloud printing, which is effectively 3D printing, and how it will change not just the motor industry but all industries associated, and obviously logistics links into every industry that you can think of. And in reality, given time, 3D printing and cloud printing will take away a lot of the logistics requirements. as long as you have a raw material, then you can pretty much print anything that you want. There are some fundamentals to overcome, which is the ownership of the rights for the design and the material costs, and how do you make margins out of this. But the university, together with people like Rolls-Royce and British Aerospace, they're working very hard to actually overcome all that, so that you don't need to store parts in a parts warehouse. They can be produced on site when required. So it takes away all the redundant stock of parts, and you've got instant access to pretty much everything that you can think of. In terms of accessorization, I think as time goes by, there will be an increase in customization. And I'm a little bit sad with what Matthias was saying about automated cars, because I think that takes away the pleasure of driving. And in reality, I think we've all been brought up with trying to drive cars which we desire to drive. And then I wouldn't like to get to that point where customization and automation takes away the joy of real driving.
Okay. But I do think the real value for finished vehicle logistics in this instance from the 3D printing will probably come more from the accessorization side. And if more and more is being done kind of at port or elsewhere, that's where 3D printing might actually have its biggest influence. Any other questions from the floor?
Okay, hi, it's again Alexander Büschen from Amazon. A question is probably to Matthias. How do you evaluate the impact of a change of how the customers perceive mobility? Like, what do you think, personal opinion, how will be the magnitude of that, and what are the chances and also the risks for the logistics industry for that?
I think that car sharing is today already, with the younger people in urban areas, very attractive. You don't need to take a look for the parking space in the night, etc., etc. Lots of positive things. And as I just mentioned, with these additional advances in these concepts, I think it will get much more attractive, also to not the urban people who have these kind of problems, but also to other people living elsewhere. I was actually, when I was preparing this presentation, I was asking a couple of people from different ages and so on. They all agreed that if it's more convenient, if it's available on the press of a thumb, more or less, in a smartphone app, and then the car is rolling in, it would be much more attractive to them. The effect on finished vehicle logistics, I think there are additional services. For example, refurbishment and the problem of what if the guy who had the car in before me just used it as a trash can. Yeah, this is something I wouldn't like to see, of course, and so therefore we need some, well, intelligence again, maybe some sensors who are detecting this and bringing this car immediately to a cleaning center somewhere, and yeah.
I'd just like to add to those comments, I think. I mean, at the moment, although car sharing is entering the mainstream, it's still incredibly marginal for the operators, and the difference between making a small margin and a loss is not a big margin. Utilization rates are relatively low compared certainly to things like daily rental. And so the best car sharing operators open and close either cities or parking spaces very, very quickly, depending upon the demand patterns. So I think there'll be an increased need for agility in locating and placing cars. Telematics can certainly help, but I think there's a key role for logistics providers in rebalancing flows and moving vehicles around. Autoliv in Paris is an interesting example. They started with bikes, and then they moved into the Autoliv concept with cars. And certainly from the bikes example, they found that there were huge imbalances in flows, partly because Paris, like lots of cities, is in a river basin, like London. So a lot of people liked cycling into the city, not so many people liked cycling out of it, up the hills. So the bikes tended to bunch up in the city centre in the day, and they needed to be back out at the more peripheral locations for the next morning. Now, cars are obviously a bit of a different option, but I suggest certainly from people's experience in the rental sector that rebalancing of flows is a significant issue, and so the greater increase of car sharing should allow increased business potential for those flow rebalancing exercises.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I mean, you know, we're all looking at the car sharing. The car makers themselves are developing their own organisations for this. So what will be the impact on logistics? Perhaps, Carlos, I'll turn to you on that. How do you see these new mobility models specifically impacting on vehicle logistics? What will the LSPs have to do to adapt and be ready as that market grows? Carlos, yes.
Yeah. Well, we're investigating how the customers are going to buy cars in the future. So because these new trends at the end, it is different needs from customers that the OEMs we need to fulfill. It is not only the usage, it is the property. So car sharing is a good example of I want to use the car, but I don't want to own it. I just want to use it from A to B, which in the rent-a-car, it is pretty useful, but with the private cars for let's say a daily life, it is now starting with car sharing. But we're investigating some other trends like online sales or directly distribution cars to door to certain customers, or distributing cars directly from factories to dealers, you know, going directly, you know, and having services in some other central hubs or in some other ways. So the way the customers are going to sell cars and how is the capacity from OEMs to attract them, because those customers more and more with these, we're in a world of digitalization, and in the future is going to be more. So we are also not so much interested in the technology that it is in the car, that it is more focused in our research and development centers. But from the sales and marketing part, we're interested in how digitalization is going to change the habits of the customers to look for cars. So nowadays, Generation Y, so every young individual is watching more internet than television. So, and normally, why do we have to spend, you know, thousands of millions in advertising if our customers are just looking internet? They are not looking TV anymore, conventional TV anymore. How are we going to approach them? So the way we adapt, we get a communication, a connection with these customers will make us, we need to change the way we also deliver the cars to them. So if the customers are asking for different things, we'll have to adapt and we'll have to be pioneers in delivering cars to those customers in a different way. So the new trends of the industry, I'm totally sure that will change for sure the way we will be distributing cars to them.
Okay. And maybe to bring Paul Sykes into that, Ben said that the kind of nearest model is the car rental model. So how do you think what would be your thoughts on how the vehicle logistics industry should adapt to the new car rental, car sharing, you know, daily rental, whatever you would call that, the new model? What do you think, what are the assets or what are the skills, requirements you look for in a finished vehicle logistics provider that will also be useful as these new mobility models develop?
I think the first point to bear in mind is that currently we completely segregate the fleet. So the daily rental fleet is a separate fleet to our on-demand or 24/7 offering. Mm-hmm. The aim is to whichever service we're talking about, to make the experience as fast and as seamless and as exciting as possible, so that the adoption of technology is fundamental to that. In terms of the role of the LSPs in that, we don't really want to move the cars. The car movement is a repositioning movement, and really if we're going to do that, we need to do it as cost effectively as possible. It also needs to be efficient. So our first aim is to try and rent the vehicles into the correct location, and that's a similar view as with the 24/7 offering. The aim is for the customer to rent the vehicle and to return the vehicle to the same location such that we're not actually involved in any movement. In the event that we do need to move the cars, then the first thing is that we have to have a robust, agile service level in place, and the vehicles must move when we need them. So our key focus is on a very short lead time. Often we need to back that up against our service levels with our customers, and using one example, we have customers where they have a 2-hour turnaround. In order to meet that, we need to have very agile suppliers. Those suppliers need to effectively collaborate within their own peer group. And one of the things that's been very interesting for me in this conference is, I agree with the comment Bjorn made, I think it was, there's lots of highly skilled individuals doing everything they can to make sure their fleets are utilized. One of my observations is that I'm really looking for capacity. So in a way, I don't want you guys to be running full all the time, because I need to be able to jump on your capacity to be able to move my vehicles. And that's why the service level is key. No matter what our customers want, we need to be able to move the vehicles to where they are. The first aim is to do that ourselves via the rental process. The second way of achieving that is to work with highly skilled, fast response LSPs that collaborate with each other in order to bring the benefits of their knowledge, capacity, and systems to bear to meet our service. So one of the things I'd like to see for the future, I guess that what this session is about, I'd like to see increased collaboration, not to the cost of the margin or the competitiveness of the business, but to achieve a better service level for customers like me. I'm less focused on port to port. I'm more focused on being able to make ad hoc movements as and when my customers demand vehicles.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
I think, sorry, just one point to add.
Yeah, please.
I think you're already seeing a segmentation and differentiation between the types of car sharing offers out there, partly because they've emerged from different backgrounds. You know, Flinkster in Germany has emerged from Deutsche Bahn, and their attempt to capture the customer journey in a different way. Some of the traditional models like Mobility in Switzerland or Zipcar came out of sort of more environmental concerns, and they've become more commercial as they've matured. And then, of course, manufacturers have got into the sector more recently. Within that, you see differences in pricing structures, flexibility of options for customers. Some of the more traditional schemes, or in fact, the majority of the schemes are still, for example, back-to-base schemes, as Paul was describing. But also, with Autoliv in Paris, with their system, or if you look at Car2Go from Daimler, they offer A to B journeys, and that's where you start to see imbalances in flows and opportunities for movement. Now, whether that means they move drivers around the city or whether they move transporters around the city is an open question. But I think as the market matures and you start to see more segmentation of car-sharing offers, I think you'll see differentiation in the opportunities available to LSPs.
Thank you. Question to Bill Kerrigan. We haven't really talked about ocean. I know you've got a few contacts in the ocean industry. What's going to happen to the ro-ro industry in the next 10 years? Is there going to be any changes? Should there be any changes? And if there are, where should they be, or where are they going to be?
Getting back to Bjorn's point before when we was talking about ro-ro, I think the ocean carriers have done a good job of trying to get different OEMs on the same vessels and on the same routes, similar routes. What I think is happening going forward is we're building bigger ships, and these bigger ships usually require that you want to go to less ports, but we seem to be going to more ports than ever these days. More ports means more opportunity for distribution, obviously getting cars closer to market, but whether we go back to a hub and spoke system or we go to develop short sea systems in these different emerging markets, I think is the big question for the next 10 to 15 years. I don't see it now because we're not building ships that allow us to do short sea, especially in areas like North America and even South America. But that's the opportunity I see. If we keep going to these larger 8,000, 10,000 CEU ships, how are they going to distribute, those vehicles over several ports?
Okay. Is Christian Fuss in the room from WWL? So Christian, if you've got any thoughts on what's your industry going to look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, it's of course a little bit difficult to predict that, but I think what you just touched upon, looking at how can you balance this with maybe a hub and spoke system, would that work? Would that allow that? Also looking at some, I think that's probably the other alternative that I on the spot now can think of, and how it looks differently. I think that's just a quick comment.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Actually, whilst you've got the microphone, Christian, sorry, I've had a question on the Automotive Live about Australia, with Australia becoming, an import market, the lack of manufacturing there. How do you see the transportation of cars to Australia by being fully utilised in terms of the ship's capacity? Is the question that we've got on Automotive Live. So how do you see, the import of cars to Australia from an ocean perspective?
Yeah, I think Australia is already a pretty mature market, and it's serviced, I think, very well. As the demand increases, I think you just have to add capacity into that market. But I don't see any major constraints in doing that.
Okay, thank you. And to Bjorn, sorry, picking on people in the audience now. The short sea shipping, one of the big, I'm fortunate for me, unfortunate for them, I have a lot of contacts with the governments. In India, for example, they've been pushing me very hard to see, asking my advice on how they can, introduce and improve short sea shipping, coastal shipping, in India, in China, and of course North America. So from one of the short sea shipping expert companies, any advice or comments for them?
First of all, just wanted to correct Bill a little bit. There are actually ships that are being built. There are short sea ships that are being constructed. In fact, USSC did place an order last week for 2 new short sea vessels that will operate on LNG. So there are new buildings, but it's not that often that actually happens. In terms of other possibilities for short sea shipping, I think there are great opportunities, both as Bill mentioned, between the US and Mexico. China, you have a setup already actually on short sea. India, it hasn't really been developed, but I think that there are lots of potentials out there. In terms of the changes we will see in our industry, I think that the terminal operation will be more automated. I think that this is also something that Matthias touched upon. I don't think that we will go too many years into the future where we see that the vehicles are being moved on their own within the terminals, and also being loaded on board the vessel. So that's a great way of being more efficient and make sure that we have the lowest possible cost levels in what we're doing.
So we will see the name change from UECC to UGCC as you become global instead of just European.
That's actually something that I leave up to our owners to comment on, NYK and Wallenius. We are restricted to operate in Europe, and that's our scope of business today.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions, comments from the floor? Okay, I'd like to, perhaps consider the technology side more. In my mind, for what it's worth, I think technology, IT, information is going to play it's going to be one of the bigger differentiators in moving forward in logistics, and particularly finished vehicle logistics, perhaps. So first to Matthias, if you've got any other comments on how IT and technology is going to play a big role in the future of vehicle logistics?
I think the more advanced technology in cars and in our daily life advances, the more advanced also the software for logistics needs to be. And as I said earlier, when you have let's say fully automated or semi-automated auto terminal or auto yard, you need an intelligent software which is able to actually operate also autonomously. And therefore we will see, well, today actually container terminals are working autonomously. Today we control their AGVs, automated guided vehicles, automated cranes, etc., which are controlled only by the software. And it's let's say again from time to time you can learn from other businesses, and there's the potential to learn from the container side at that point.
And maybe to Richard Barker from Sovereign, when you hand over, when Louise is the chairman of Sovereign and Anthony's a managing director, what would you like your legacy, what would you like to think that in 10 years' time, or perhaps your dream now, what impact, what will Sovereign, or companies like Sovereign really, be adding to vehicle logistics in the future? What kind of services would you like to see companies like yours offering the industry?
I think the technology today, not just in this industry, but right across industry, is reflecting in our lives and what's expected of us. The cloud's going to have a huge influence on what people can do and what people will want, and they will expect more of the suppliers or the OEMs, quite frankly. And if they can't get what they get, they're going to go elsewhere to get what the people will actually provide you with. So I think it will change our views as people about how the IT industry reflects in our day-to-day life. I mean, I take Matthias's point about the car, about how you could have an automated car. I mean, you have it in planes, except you don't get rid of the pilots. So I'm not actually sure you're actually going to get rid of the steering wheel. But the premise of what he's saying is probably very true. You'll start to run your homes and everything by phoning up and saying, I'm going to be late home tonight, can you close the curtains later, put the fire on later, etc. And all this is actually happening. It's not a dream, it is actually happening now, and we're seeing it in the industry. I think our industry, and I regard myself as part of the automotive industry, we need to embrace IT more in order to drive some of the things out. Each market is very different. We talk about things such as backhauling. UECC don't think we are doing a lot together, but in places in England, there aren't opportunities to do backhaul, so a truck driver does have to drive his truck empty, and it is costing him a lot of money. We've got to do things to actually try to cut out the waste in there. It's also very interesting to see about, Andrea mentioned yesterday about being green, and yet the true situation is we all put up our hands and said we don't want to pay for it. And all of these type of things are adding up to, and what we've got to do is use technology to try and address many items right across the industry. It's not just any one single thing. So, yeah, I'd like to hand over as soon as possible to Louise, and, you know, I'll give the reins to our man in front of me now, and I shall retire for the rest of the day, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Louis, can I?
Yes, please.
Talking about technology and how it's going to affect finished vehicle logistics, we've been talking about that for a few years now, right? And the crux of the matter is the technology is there. There's many people in this room who can provide optimization tools, but you have to have the data in order to get to that optimization. So it's going to be up to the OEMs when and if they decide to collectively find a neutral, legal, third party or site or something like that, where they can pool that data so we can define metrics, we can do benchmarking, and then people like Matthias and Sovereign can go ahead and actually use the tools that they have. You can't use algorithms unless you have the right data. So, without the data, you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add to that. One of the things I find with the type of carriers that we typically work with is they haven't got the level of technology, and they are waiting for the OEMs to kind of cascade it down the tiers of the supply chain. What I've noticed in the last year or so is that more and more small transporter companies, especially those that are slightly more entrepreneurial, are actually going out to the market and acquiring this technology. I think the barriers and the costs are coming down dramatically. There's more and more players out there that are providing them with a relatively low-cost, simple-to-adopt solution. And then they're presenting us with these solutions, which is really refreshing. I think what I'd like to see is less of an OEM focus in a way. I'd like to see the OEM, they're very important, they drive the market, they set the standards. But I'd like to see a greater level of representation on these kind of events of these smaller suppliers, because I think they're becoming more and more important. Especially for me, where I'm demanding that flexibility and agility, and especially if you do succeed in sort of removing those empty loads, then it's going to become more and more important that we recognize the skills of the smaller suppliers, because they really are going to fill those holes in terms of a very dynamic approach. And I think the technology is coming to them. I think what the larger tech providers need to be mindful of is whatever they do develop needs to integrate seamlessly with these other solutions as well. You know, we're probably all running different enterprise solutions. And even within our organization, for example, we have different solutions in different countries. What's refreshing right now is we're seeing platforms being put into the market that can flex to those needs. And I think that there's not enough recognition of that, and we need to look at how we can integrate that into the bigger platforms that the OEMs use. Yeah.
Maybe if I can add to that, when we look at ourselves providing a product, providing the software product, we have identified 3 areas where we focus on in the next couple of years, where our roadmap is focused on. And this is, one thing is usability, making better graphical user interfaces, more likely. I mean, Apple with the iPhone has shown us how nice and how sexy the use of technology can be. And yes, I have to admit that for some years we have neglected that field. And our industry customers, we need to move into that to make it more sexy to use it, more easy also to use it. Secondly, we have to make the software more flexible in order to be able to model, for example, business processes instead of programming. This business process modeling where you simply can draw lines and place tags in order to set up a new process which you need for your customer, for example. And then lower the cost, the investment cost for new projects. Secondly, also, or part B is here, speaking about less investment into the adaptation and integration to other systems. So we need a standardization and a harmonization, which will take decades if we leave it to the OEMs. But I think, and I mean, it's a huge topic to really put that through at an OEM. So I think we need their services available, which offer a standard interface, and where smaller LSPs, but also bigger LSPs, can simply, with speaking one language, get all the data they need and return status updates, etc. So everybody will actually benefit from it, also the OEMs, because it will be more accurate data, less cost on the technology side for the LSPs. Well, and thirdly, our own topic is, of course, still optimization and applying more and more of optimization functionality we used in other fields to do it specifically for finished vehicle logistics. So today, just one example, our optimizer for load configuration of trucks, speaking lots of time about driving empty and so on, and not with full capacity. The optimizer is today able to do this from one compound and sending out trucks to hundreds of dealers. And we are currently working on making it also possible to have like multiple pickups and deliveries. So to service, for example, smaller customers who only need 2 cars to be brought from A to B. And these are from, I guess it's pretty similar to maybe the roadmap other IT providers have.
Okay. So first there, and then we'll come to Bjorn. First there.
Louis, just to pick up, quite a few points have just come out there. I don't actually think we can continually go back to the OEM to expect him to get all the data. One is, I don't believe that we trust the OEM with our data. End of story. And you also have to look at one another. Would UECC use Wilhelm Wallenius's systems to put their information on? So there's got to be some, as I said yesterday, some sort of interchange between data, some neutral party, I believe. We should also go back again, look at the rate of the way Amazon has grown and what they provide you with. I think IT is making too much of an issue with it these days and don't go enough into the service. Issues about talking to one another's computers is so simplified in comparison to what it used to be. But I think we actually make a mountain out of a molehill, and the first thing we do is we tell you how many months, how many years it's going to take to talk to somebody else. We want to get to the point where it's like Amazon. You just go onto Amazon, you order whatever it is you want, you go away again. That facility is available now, and we should be doing more to make it happen in this industry that way.
Okay, thank you. Bjorn, did you still want to ask a question?
I think that we should not kid ourselves as LSPs. We cannot sit and wait for the OEMs to help us to drive waste out, to be more efficient. That's not going to happen. The OEMs are in this business to produce vehicles, and we need to transport those for them. So I think we need to take the destiny into our own hands, actually. And this is what we do every day. We engineer networks based on studies we have done, and then we try to maximize that to its fullest anyway. So I think that we really need to take charge of our own future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of the of time. Well, not the end of time, because that would be a very extreme statement. But we've reached the end of the session at the very least. So firstly, I'd like to thank the panel for their great contributions. After this, we're back in this room. Everyone's back in this room for the next two sessions. So next after lunch will be the round tables. There will be at least 2 tables for finished vehicle logistics, which we can join. We can split them into different areas if you want them to be. We can join them and have one big discussion. But it's definitely worth coming back for the round tables. Unfortunately, I'm not in marketing, so I don't know how to describe it to describe its full effect. But they're definitely worth coming back in for. And please don't miss the final session. We'll get some really big hitters to come in and tell us their views. The last chance to ask them, to ask some of the bigger picture questions. You know, there's been instances, say, in football matches where Manchester United won the European Cup by scoring 2 goals in the last couple of minutes. I can't remember who they beat. Was it Bayern Munich or someone they beat? So a lot can happen in the final session. So don't spend 1 3/4 days at a conference and miss one of the most important sessions at the end. So enjoy your lunch hosted by Agility, and we look forward to seeing you after that. Thank you.